Aaron, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So, as a quick word of intro, you are the co-founder and CEO of Pluralsight. So, Pluralsight is one of those companies that, if you are in the education or online training space, you absolutely have heard of. If you're a software developer, you absolutely have heard of. If you're outside of it, you may not have heard of the company just yet. But you are a super fast-growing online professional training company. I have a few notes here. I've read somewhere that you now reach more than 1 million learners and 9,500 companies in over 150 countries. Is that still accurate? Okay. And you have raised 162.5 million in 2 rounds from 4 investors: Inside, Iconic, Felicia Sorensen, at close to $1 billion valuation, and you did that fairly late in the history of the company, and we'll talk about this.
Yeah. About 9 years in.
9 years in. Okay, super interesting. So, wanted to start maybe with precisely the story of the company and your entrepreneurial journey. How did you start it? What were you doing before? How did the idea come up? What were the first 2 or 3 years like?
So, I mean, the idea for the company started back in 2003, 2004, when I was flying around the world teaching technology classes on similar things that we're talking about tonight. I was at a company in Southern California that kind of prided itself in finding the best technologists in the world, and we built this training company around these people. And we'd go teach about the hardest, kind of most in-depth things around at the time. And then the idea to form Pluralsight just kind of fell out of that. It was combining 2 passions of mine and my co-founders, which is really a deep love for technology, all technology, and also a love for teaching. And Pluralsight was the fusion of those 2 interests for us, and started out very much just like the experience of the 90s, where we were flying around the world teaching classes. That's where we started the company. And then it was about 3 years in that we had an epiphany that we could actually use technology to change the way we taught and delivered it around the world. And that was when we realized that Pluralsight could become much more than just people in classrooms. It could be a delivery platform, and we could gather these technologists globally who were the very best in their fields and be able to share that with their audience wherever they happen to be in the world.
So just to put that in context, so I guess maybe that was not what it was known at the time, but like the term has become pivot, essentially.
Yeah.
Sort of walk us, this is a data event, but it's also very much about startups and entrepreneurship. Walk us about what you guys did. I mean, you overnight stopped doing one thing and started the other thing, and you decided that you were going to build an online platform?
Yeah, probably the most pivotal decision of our journey was in 2007. We were 3 years into the business. We had built a small practice with about maybe 25 instructors teaching for us at the time. And we had lots of customers around the world, big technology companies who were taking our classes. It was very interesting at the time because we knew that our customers were facing some financial strain around training. This was, think about 2007 into 2008 with the bank crisis kind of on the doorstep, looming, and we realized that there was an appetite for different forms of training. And so we set out, again, we were kind of solving a lot of different pain points. There was the financial pain point of the customer. There was the lifestyle pain point of our instructor. They wanted to get off the airplane. And there was also just the kind of the flexibility pain point of I can't get the very best person to come to me right when I need the help. And so we were trying to kind of solve all those problems, and that was when this idea formed to kind of just take it all online. And we used the classroom training revenue at the time, which is a couple million in revenue, to sustain the funding of the new online business. So at this point in time, we hadn't raised any money. My co-founders and I didn't even know how to raise money at the time. We didn't know anything about it, and thought it was kind of evil, like we would not do that. And it was just, we didn't understand it, didn't understand how it worked. We had, it put the company at risk. I mean, we kind of at the beginning thought we were building a lifestyle company. And so the first few years was just, we were just living on savings until we got the thing off the ground. And then once we went into this online thing, it was actually the revenue stream of that professional services business that allowed us to build this platform, this technology company, without selling big stakes of the company while we were trying to figure it out. So from 2007 until 2010, that was the journey. And another 3 years in, so first 3 years was classroom, next 3 years was classroom and online. That was when we realized, okay, now we've got to make the really hard decision of, do we keep doing classroom or not? And at that point, it was still half of our revenue. It was 50% of the revenue. But the online piece was growing so quickly in 2010, and we felt like the organization was very perplexed in terms of focus, like not knowing how to think about resource allocation and focus and how to think about building teams and so forth, that we made a very swift and clear decision to just kill the classroom business completely. And the way we did that was we told the sales team, we said, we're not going to cash another check for classroom training business after December 31 of this year. That was about mid-year. And it caused the whole company to kind of pivot to online, the online business, and that was really the turning point.
Did you lose people? Did you have to rehire?
Yeah, we ended up, some of the people on those teams, both in sales was probably it was sales, and it was also the instructors. It was kind of most disruptive to those two groups, because the instructors went from making $10,000 a week to go teach maybe a 4-day course somewhere to making a royalty on a $20 a month subscription without a big audience at the time, right? And so like coming to terms with that was like really difficult for some of those folks, and we just said, just trust us. Like if we build this thing, like you'll be able to do better financially. You're not going to be on a plane every week, and I would say about half of them stayed with us, and half kind of fell to the side and found other things to do. But the ones who believed are our top earning authors today, and last year our top author made over $2 million in royalties in a single year.
I agree. Did the whole dynamic around raising money or not raising money have something to do with the fact that you guys are based in Utah? And maybe for context, so I don't know if anybody here was here, but like we had Ryan from Qualtrics, I guess a few months ago. I'm fascinated by Utah. I'm fascinated by the fact that there's you guys, there's Qualtrics, there's Inside Sales, there's Domo, all those billion-dollar companies which seem to be coming out of nowhere.
A lot of data-centric companies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I think part of it's because, you're forced to kind of play by different rules when you're not surrounded by venture capitalists all the time. And if you don't really have that experience or that desire to kind of start that way, you kind of start with a different playbook. And I think that's what Ryan and I share in common, for example. Our companies are very similar in terms of journey and some of the decisions we made. You kind of have to figure out how to get to product market fit. You have to figure out how to make some of those pivots. You have to work through the hard times without being flush with capital. You have to learn how to make it work. And I think you learn a tremendous amount of discipline so that by the time you've figured it out. Ryan always uses the term nail it, then scale it, right? I think that's probably the common trend amongst most Utah companies. They've kind of nailed the business model and the product market fit before they've thrown a lot of money on it to really try to scale it.
And the reverse is probably true in the Valley, right?
Yeah.
Scale it, then nail it.
That's right.
Yes.
That's exactly
so
right.
let's start getting into the data stuff. So first of all, Pluralsight is a great place if you want to learn about big data, analytics, data science. So you can go online and take courses.
And we're always looking for new instructors, authors. So obviously anyone in this room who's like a data expert, those are exactly the kind of people we're looking for at Pluralsight to come in and help teach what you know to the world. And we have the channel into the enterprise customers around the world. So we're always looking for instructors, authors who want to come in and share their knowledge. But we also have, quite a deep catalog in, in big data, data warehousing, data visualization, data analytics, all the major data technologies today, different platforms that exist, and we're always looking to bring on new, interesting platforms that look like they're going to have a lot of impact on the world.
Yeah, because so fundamentally, so the experience. So if I'm a user, then I get online and I pay. How much do I pay?
It's $29 a month for an individual subscriber.
Yeah. Or my company can pay.
Or your company can pay. The experience and the solution is a little bit different. On the business side, we start out at $500 per user per seat per year, and that really ends up replacing what they have historically been spending on instructor-led training, which is usually in the thousands of dollars per person per year plus travel.
And it's all you can eat?
All you can eat, all access to all technologies, all courses. We have over 5,000 courses today in the library that cover not just data, but every programming language that was in there on the screenshot. All of the different development, languages, frameworks, product design as well. We actually have a pretty deep library on all things Adobe and just different design experiences. We're building out a much deeper catalog around just product and user experience, modern product and user experience techniques today as well.
So, and just to close this, so it's almost a marketplace, right? Or is it? Do you consider?
Yeah, I would call it a curated marketplace. So we curate the authors. No one can publish anything into our platform without being highly vetted and curated. So we'll never publish two of the same thing, right? So our courses and the curriculums are very well kind of thought out. So the number one problem we're trying to solve for an enterprise is, or any business for that matter, is if they buy Pluralsight and they're using it, they can trust that the knowledge and the training they're going to get is legit, it's accurate, it's high quality, and hopefully the instruction is also very engaging and easy to understand. We try to take very complex, difficult things and break them down into things that are just easy for anyone to do, or anyone to learn. And we also have a learn-to-code platform called codeschool.com, which is kind of top of funnel for us. That's for learning a new language or a new syntax like CSS or what have you for the first time. That's completely interactive in the browser. So that's more of the learn to code experience. And then on pluralsight.com, it's much more of screencasting, video instruction combined with exercises and other types of hands-on components that you would do on your own machine.
Great. So one of the many aspects that make Pluralsight a very interesting company is that you're data-driven throughout. So starting with your products themselves. So let's talk about the assessment first. And I think you bought a company called Smarter. I'm curious about how you use data to build those adaptive assessments.
We're tracking a lot of data throughout our learning ecosystem, the activities of the learners, what's working, what's not. And we actually expose all of that data to our authors as well through a dashboard that they can see to improve their own techniques and teaching experience. So we're very much believers in the discovery that comes from data. So we've tried to build a culture at the company and throughout the product around that. Like, we want to make data accessible to whoever's part of our ecosystem, and we want the data to drive discoveries, innovations, and improvements. And so we could talk about all the different facets of kind of how that plays out, but certainly, like in the product itself, one of the things that's a huge part of our future is the belief that technology-oriented assessments or assessments that measure the understanding of real complex technologies is going to drive the way modern organizations think about acquiring talent, managing talent, and workforce planning in the future. We think it's less about the branded higher education credential in the future and more about technology-specific credentials that really measure how much you know about something. So this company called Smarter, which we acquired last year, was very focused on kind of building an engine that would allow you to basically crowdsource the questions around a technology. So we can go pull questions from people all across the industry who are practitioners using that technology. And then we can build an adaptive testing algorithm around those questions to basically figure out which ones provide signal and which ones don't, and then be able to deliver a sequence of questions in as short amount of time as possible to really get to what we think is a credible score around that measures that person's skill in that area, where there's very little kind of degree of error. So that's what that provides.
And just to make sure I understand, so that means, so it's adaptive, meaning that a little bit like, I guess, GMAT these days, where when you ask a question, depending on how you answer the
next question will be different.
Will be different.
Yeah, and so basically, I mean, the way to think about it is, say we're measuring your proficiency on JavaScript. We would throw a question at you in the harder range, and then based on that, we kind of have this based on your answer to that, we kind of have a range of understanding of where your skill level probably is. And each question we throw you after that kind of reduces that range of variation until we get down to where there's so little variation at that point that it doesn't really matter anymore. We just say that's your score. And usually we can do that if we have enough data. We can, in a particular topic area, we can do it in about 10 questions. So in literally about 2 minutes, we can give someone what feels something like a GMAT score for a particular technology that they can then, that will then show up on their profile and will actually have signal for the business that they work for.
Amazing. And so what do you do next? Then you recommend content based on...
So what we're building now is like how we evolve our learning experience around that data. And we're actually in the middle of, we're just about to release the first fully integrated solution where these things come together on Pluralsight.com in about 2 to 3 weeks. And then the adaptive learning paths are the next thing that we'll release. So now that once those scores start to show up on an individual's profile on Pluralsight.com, we're going to be able to be very clever around what we suggest to them next and really build what's an individualized learning path to get to where they're trying to go. So if they give us a little more information on their profile of where they're trying to go, what they're trying to do, and then start populating their profile with some of these scores and these key technology areas, the path that will get them there will emerge.
That means that the content needs to be atomized as well.
That's right.
Small modules.
Yeah, so all of our courses are broken. A course for us is usually about 3 to 5 hours of video content plus exercises. And each course is broken down into modules, which are usually 30 to 45 minutes of video. And then each module is actually broken down into 1 to 2 minute video clips, we call them. And all of those have metadata associated with them. And so, we have this notion, we have content experts in each technology area that are kind of curating learning paths, like, predefined learning paths if you're starting from zero and trying to get to some place of mastery. But as we start filling in these data points, a lot of those holes will get filled in, and we'll be able to provide a much clearer path as in terms of how to get to this level of proficiency. Salman Khan from the Khan Academy talks, like math, for example. They've built this entire learning tree of like all the concepts in math that you have to learn to know everything there is to know about math, right? And it's one big tree of knowledge.
Very, very big tree.
Yeah, and one of the things they find in K through 12 education is the kids who struggle the most with math struggle because they've got all these he calls it Swiss cheese learning. Like they missed a week of school because they had the measles or whatever, and they end up with all these holes in their knowledge, and that ends up becoming a huge stumbling block to them later on. And so if you can actually fill in all those holes, then the learning actually accelerates in the future. And it's much more complete, and you have a much more complete understanding of that topic area. And so we kind of believe the same things that in our key kind of technology professions, we need to understand what those kind of core skills are, what the paths look like to master those skills. And then with these data points that we're now going to finally have, I think a lot of people never really believed that you could actually measure those things. I think that's the thing. That's our big bet for the future that will take Pluralsight from being $1 billion company to a $10, $20 billion company, is if that actually works.
Meaning the feedback loop where you keep assessing not just the level,
right,
but the result of pushing that module to that person at that point in time.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's the holy grail online learning. There's tons of companies trying to solve this problem in very different ways. And a lot of the data plays into this in a very, very big way. So, we're trying to take a very pragmatic approach to how we solve this problem, which is basically a combination of content and knowledge that comes from experts in the field, along with a technology platform that is driven by data, and bringing the two together. So it's not actually it doesn't feel like rocket science to us. It actually feels like a pretty solvable problem. If we understand the paths, these trees of knowledge in these key technology professions, and we have a way to measure those skills at a small enough level to kind of know how to paint a helpful picture to the individual who's trying to learn and progress.
That's fascinating, right?
Yeah.
I guess we had a company called Newton that came and spoke here. But this whole concept, and this basically means that the way education has been done for the last centuries is changing through data, right?
Yeah.
Where instead of having one textbook for everyone that's displayed the same way that everybody needs to learn and memorize, it's becoming completely this data-driven, evolving
That's right. And the way what they're trying to do is they're trying to solve, I think, a much harder problem, because they're trying to do it for all of learning. And we're taking a very specific approach in the technology domain, which I think is a little easier to solve some of these problems around. And that's really our edge.
Great. All right, so to close, because I want to leave some time for people to ask questions. There's another fascinating aspect of what data means at Pluralsight that you and I discussed, which is how you organized around a data department to enable people to access the data, a little bit to your earlier point.
Yeah, I'm just curious, how many companies here that are represented here have a chief data officer or something equivalent to it? Just a couple? We decided first and foremost that if we were going to build a data organization, that organization would have to have influence at the highest levels within the company, and we knew that we would have to. We knew that we didn't have enough data expertise around the company. One of the speakers spoke about how that last mile is always the most challenging. Of actually, once you've got the data, you got the architecture, you got the tools and systems in place, then actually getting something useful to happen with it is usually most companies' biggest challenge. So we designed our organization to try to solve that problem, and we figured that the best way to do it was to hire a guru team of data experts. So someone who's a chief data officer type person who leads that team, knows how to hire data scientists, data warehousing, data analytics, and data visualization people. You put them all in a team, and they're the core of the business. Their job is to define the architecture, pull all the data in from across the company, working with all the stakeholders across the company, and make sure that they're advocating for what can be done with this data across the company. And so that's the hub. And then we figured you would have to have spokes in each organization that were kind of the receptacles, like the people that really do the last mile type work, who would then have really tight relationships with the data team. They don't report into there, but they have they're part of that guild. They're part of that, that's their tribe, right? They're the ones out there in the field, taking the data, all the tools that were built by this team, and actually materializing business value from that data. So we call it our hub and spoke model. And we've got about probably 15 people on that core data team. And then we have 1 or 2 analysts across every major functional group across the company, and that know how to actually work with Tableau, process data, think about queries, and visualize it in interesting ways that are helpful to the business. And then that's where our data scientists also come in, and they kind of jump around across those functional groups to work with those analysts to help them understand how to ask the right questions. Are we asking the right questions? Are we actually looking at this data in interesting ways and actually delivering value, getting value out of it?
And as a CEO, did you have to send a very clear and strong signal that this was it, this is a department, everybody gets out of the way,
Yeah.
let them do their work?
And there's always, we hold a monthly prioritization meeting with the entire leadership, kind of core executive leadership team and the data leaders, specifically the chief data officer, where we get aligned on what the most important projects are, because that's where you might run into the biggest issues because you want the data to kind of help guide some of those things, and you don't often know where the most value is going to be because it's kind of in there in the data, and you're trying to discover those things. So I would say prioritization is probably the biggest challenge with this kind of model, because who ultimately decides what's most important, right? And so we decided we would do that as a group, as a leadership team, once a month, and just to kind of guide and where we're spending time and resources. But overall, I mean, we've been really surprised at how much it's transformed the way we operate as a company. One of our core values at Pluralsight is truth-seeking. So we're always kind of looking for the truth. And and it means we fundamentally believe that there's always a better answer, and there's something we don't fully understand. And data is such a huge part of figuring that out. Like, I don't see how you can be a truth-seeking organization without being data-oriented, right? So I would say we didn't have a lot of the core DNA originally in the company. It took hiring the right kind of data leader, who then came in and had the vision for how we were going to build some of these things and kind of take the cultural aspirations that we wanted to have in terms of how we would make our organization more data-driven and bring that to life operationally. I think every company could benefit from more of that type of focus. Companies that I advise with, I try to, even if it's just one person, who can try to get, the company to think more in that way. I think there's a lot of value in that. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here in this room. So.
Yes. Great. We have time for a few questions. Whoever is closer. And then the lady over there afterwards.
Two questions.
Yeah.
What are the average and median annual takes for your authors?
So
this is
that's a really good question. So the median is, do you want it after you've done one course, after 5 courses, or 10 courses? So after 10, if you've published, I'll start with 5. If you've published more than 5 courses with us on the platform, the median is about $3,500 per course per quarter. And then the average would be slightly lower than that, probably about $2,700. So it's actually so someone who's done 10 courses on the platform, that becomes pretty substantial. You're in the 6 figures per year.
And the second question.
Actually, just one. We have to, but
I'll be around after. We can chat after.
Lady over there. Yes.
So as a pre-user of the Pluralsight, and right now I changed to Coursera. The reason is because the price charging is not make sense to me, because Pluralsight is charged by monthly. And I guess the most of users on taking class for the Pluralsight is people who are working. And to me, if you register for the Pluralsight, it's best to take as many courses as possible. But to me, I for the people who are working, we don't have much time to taking courses like that. It's
right.
Sometimes just waste of money. You just pay a month and you're taking courses. But Pluralsight on the other side, they charge by course, and sometimes even free. And at some point you can charge if you want to really continue taking courses. So I was just wondering, if you ever consider, why you guys, having this charging model, pay by month, and as we know, we have tons of resources, online courses, free online.
Right.
So why make Coursera?
Yeah, it's a great question. This was one of the things that fundamentally we believed was important in the beginning of the business, to have a SaaS-oriented learning platform that we really saw ourselves as kind of the Netflix of technology learning, where, if you want to come in and be part of this growing, ecosystem of courses, that you would just want to be a member of this thing. So we thought about it more in terms of membership than taking courses, and that was the paradigm shift for a lot of people. A lot of people have that issue, that kind of psychological issue of, if I'm paying for a course, I'm taking a course, like I should just pay for that one course, and then when I'm done, I should always have access to that course. And we decided early on that we just weren't going to do it that way. Like, we wanted people to think about this as a kind of a membership, oriented business where you would pay to be part of this ecosystem and have access to those resources for a period of time. And then if you chose not to, that's fine too. And for to a large degree, we do have some issues with that perception still today. But one of the things we're trying to do is actually diverge the enterprise experience or the business experience from the individual experience. Like, our stated purpose as a company is to democratize professional learning. Ultimately, we want to increase the accessibility to this kind of learning to people all over the world. And so over time, I would see the enterprise price point staying where it's at and the individual price point coming way down. I would love to see Pluralsight in the Netflix price range and potentially even have a version of it that is free. And so, but we're kind of struggling with a moment in time in terms of what our value proposition is to the enterprise and what it looks like to the individual, because they were really kind of built one and the same. And those things are diverging now. So I think our mission, is very similar to kind of what Coursera, other education companies want, but we're very much focused on the professional landscape, whereas I think Coursera has a different focus, more in terms of higher ed and kind of the fundamental academic degrees.
Great. Last question of the night.
I'm interested in whether you talked about the material and exercise component. The exercises sound like they are all closed-ended in effect, which lends itself very much to a data-driven approach. But have you also looked at offering more open-ended problem-solving kind of exercises, which are harder to do because a lot of times then you need a peer review sort of model? Is that part of the platform or something?
Yeah, well, it's not today, but it's definitely something we are talking about and thinking about pretty deeply. One of the other pieces of infrastructure we brought in this last year is a new mentoring platform that will provide the foundation for making some of that work. So with this new mentoring platform, we're able to do a couple of things. We're able to basically let our authors connect into consulting and mentoring jobs on the fly as well, without all the red tape of having to negotiate rates and all that stuff. Think of it like the Uber connection into small deals like that. But then also we can actually live code with that person, see their problem, what they're dealing with, and actually video. We can record those sessions if we choose to. So we've thought a lot about like how to take kind of a challenge approach to certain types of coursework, and then be able to bring in live proctors or mentors, kind of like you would in a kind of a lab environment at school, to kind of participate in that learning journey on the fly. It's not too different from Udacity is kind of doing this in some ways with they're basically tapping in. I think they're using Upwork's consultants in the Upwork, the Elance,
A FirstMark portfolio company.
Oh, it is. Oh, very good. Awesome. I didn't even know I was plugging it for you.
Thank you.
But
Newton too, by the way.
Yeah. Okay. So these companies are plugging into this network of paid professionals out there to basically provide those types of things on that type of kind of hand holding on the fly. So we love the idea of open-ended project work that can then be graded somehow. We also like the idea of being able to mentor through some of those activities, almost like when we hire developers, we make them sit down with our developers for like a half a day and do pair programming. So, I mean, that's the only way to really figure out how much they know, besides the stuff I talked about earlier, which we think will also provide a lot of good signal in terms of their technology depth and understanding. But really to understand how well they work as a team, how they solve problems, some of those things, we think that's a huge part of kind of our future platform at some point too. So.
All right, on this note, wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Really
guys.
enjoyed it.